what does this mean? What will this mean for my Great West Life pension if we switch? But what we're going to do moving forward for further engagement is have a meeting with all of the supervisors, and then we're going to be delegating tasks in terms of making sure that each unit within the organization has an opportunity to formulate questions and feels informed on the plan. So we're still moving forward with the engagement process.
Well, I might stop you there. I think that the employees were looking for a little bit more than that, I guess. They wanted to meet collectively with representatives from CAAT to fully discuss and ask questions directly to them. It's a little bit impersonal, I guess, in terms of looking at webinars and memorandums, etc., and just information like that. They want to actually have an opportunity to have a one-on-one and a question with them. So I would see that happening perhaps on a group basis. I don't know, because of the COVID restrictions, that we would have to look at utilizing the arena or something like that to accommodate that type of process. And as well, when I looked at the recommendations that sprung out of that finance committee meeting and that were subsequently approved by the council, there was no specific recommendation on that. It was just a discussion point. But an important part of that discussion point was leading to some type of approval, vote or poll by the employees themselves to really register their satisfaction and approval or acceptance to go forward with the plan. That's the way I read that. And I think that a number of employees would welcome that, because they feel that this whole new push towards this CAT pension plan is being sort of forced down their throats, and then they're pushing back on that, and they don't like that. They want to discuss their options and to have a little bit more, I guess, opportunity to talk and receive answers from the company representatives themselves.
And I like the idea of group sessions, if that will work, and we can certainly explore that as well.
It's going to have to work, yeah, it's going to have to work, yeah. Question, Marcia?
I agree. We always tend to leave the poor employee out of the mix. It's important that everybody understand, but it's impacting on our employees, and some probably not making that much. Someone needs to sit with them and say, okay, here you are today, and if you do this, this is where you're going to be tomorrow. We owe it to them to treat them with that respect, that they're important in this organization. When I started as the administrator for the education, I had one senior worker that was due to retire within a very short period of time. And when we had the pension people down, because she didn't pay into pension for many, many years, only for a few short years before retirement, she got $88 pension. And there wasn't anything I could do about it,
Right.
because she had already been there that long. And I hope that doesn't ever happen to another person. And I've also heard stories that people start, and according to their contracts, they get enrolled in benefit plan, but that doesn't automatically happen. It could be 6 months, 12 months, or whatever. We need to really, really track how these employees and make sure they're put on a plan, because it's so very important for the retirement.
Right.
So I don't know the difference between, I know Great West, I'm with Great West for my pension, but I mean, everyone will call me in my era, J.D. McDonald, who was our pension man for many years. He came out to the island almost on a daily basis and met with people. He went that extra mile. And he educated us on the pensions and everything. So these companies want our business, then they need to go that extra mile for us. We are important. Our community is important, and these poor, our employees our oath of respect to have somebody sit with them and go through it.
I agree with all those points. Ron?
Yeah, you're exactly right, I think, and the other three councilors can disagree or agree with me, but it's my understanding that they were gonna consult with all our workers and staff here on the First Nation and have them understand what the implication would be to their retirement or benefits and such. And then we would act upon once we had that consultation period.
Any other comments? So you'll proceed on that basis and to look at that accommodation for the employees, and we'll hear a report back, I guess.
Definitely. And I think what we wanted to do in our process was make sure council was on board before we start engaging employees on something council doesn't have the appetite for, but we hear that the appetite is for more engagement, and I think they're eager to do that, so.
Yep, and that desire is coming from the employees, and we're reinforcing by the council. Valerie?
I have a question, James. If some employees don't want to change, do they have the option of staying with the company they're with, Great West?
So they certainly have the option of, so the pension they have in there today, so if we switch tomorrow, they have a number of options with that money in Great West Life. And Great West Life, if they choose, could continue to manage it until they retire, right? So they would continue to manage it in the market, and it would continue to grow, so they would have that option.
Would they still be paying into Great West though?
Not necessarily into the model we're considering.
It would have to be 100% of employee agreement then?
So we look into something, if there's a lot
Maybe you
of,
should,
well,
because it sounds like you're not gonna get 100% buy-in, but what I've read.
right, so we can, they said they'd be willing to consider something like a sunset period where employees can continue to contribute, and we have Great West Life as an option for a number of years. That would make it more complicated to administer, but it's a possibility.
I guess the great stumbling block I have with this whole process is it seems to be there's a big push, I guess, to get this deal done with CAAT for whatever reasons. And it also appears that there's a near total disregard by to the employees and their needs and their wants, I guess, in their unique situations where they want the big partial payout at retirement for a vacation or addition to their home or whatever else they need. I think that the flexibility and the greatest amount of options should be offered to the employees because in essence, it's their money. And I see this ploy by CAP as almost like a marketing approach. I want all of your employees and no compromises here. I don't want 90% or 80% or 50%. I want them all. And any company would do that if they saw for the potential for 400 clients coming up, and that would be a big feather in their hat. So I think that let's really listen to the wants and needs of the employees, and let's respond to that, and not necessarily push this deal with CAP. Neva?
I'm just wondering where that push came from. Were we approached by that, or was something not working with our current company that's we're with?
We approached them. From my perspective, I noticed it was difficult for us to recruit our own members that were in the public sector elsewhere that were already paying into a defined benefit plan. And I didn't know that this particular plan existed. Because if we wanted a traditional defined benefit plan, it's a much higher contribution right now. It's usually 13 or 14%. So when I found out about it and when other senior staff found out about it, it seemed like a way to attract staff that are used to that benefit plan. Plus, in most circles, it's regarded as a better plan because when you retire, there's more value, right? So that was something we began to explore. So if that answers your question, we thought that.
So it wasn't necessarily that what is working for the employees now. What you're talking about is part of the recruitment strategy, sounds like, to make being employed on a pool attractive to potential officer?
That was what initially attracted me to it. I know other senior staff, they were concerned with the number of staff we have that they retired and they don't have enough to live on, and we're aware of that. So they were saying, let's look at pension options that provide a more stable retirement, because there is a lot of risk in Great West.
I was gonna say, yeah, that happens because half our employees are not paid for what they should be paid, like what they would be paid off reserve. Like their salary isn't up to par. So of course they're going to not get what they should be getting at the end of the day when they retire. So our salaries are all out of whack as well. I know we raised them, like last year, year before, but I mean, they've been so low for so long. I mean, one employee I know of didn't get a raise for like 5-10 years. So I mean, paying into a pension that's so low, you know, and then you retire, you're not gonna, you're gonna get like $8,
They're not even keeping pace with the cost of living.
right?
So a defined benefit, it does keep pace with the cost of living. If we had a traditional where the contribution rates are very high, because I was in one for a couple of years, you're looking at retiring with a very similar salary to what you have while you're working, and it continues to increase based on inflation. So put that next to a defined contribution plan, it's far greater benefit. But I agree, we should bring them in and we should hear from them directly.
You're next to the salesman.
Right, so disregard my sales shit.
I agree with Valerie. My question was, it's fine for the upper echelon because they're making really good money. But for the peons down below, if you're talking about 13.5%, that's a lot of money from that they're contributing.
Plus your Merck.
And that's what's different about this plan, is it allows the 8% contribution. And so the first thing we did was we engaged those contributing 5% directly, because we knew that would have the greatest impact. But now we're looking at more engagement, because we wanted to know, do you have concerns? Because that's gonna affect their take-home pay.
I thought everyone was at 8% now.
There's a few that are at 5%, but we did engage that group directly.
So it's at 8 and 8 right now, a matching.
Yeah.
Everyone across the board should at least be at 8 and 8.
There are some at 5 and 5. There's probably 15 to 20% are at 5 and 5.
That's significant.
It is significant, but we do have the costing and everything, and that's what we provided to the finance committee. And some of the engagement we've done already based on that direction.
I guess we can go on and on, but we're not speaking on behalf of the employees. I think that engagement has to really be with the discussion, I guess, with the employees and the representatives of CAT and/or James.
My preference is for Kat to come in and session.
Here we go, okay, good. That's what I want to hear. That's what the employees want to hear. Okay, moving on. James.
So I'll hand it to Robert for the signing authority.
Okay, so there's a briefing note there for an increase in the signing limits. So if you look at the financial regulations, there's Appendix B, which states the current amount of $2,500 for supervisors. I believe Scott has 5,000, and two directors or one director is at 10,000, and then the director of operations, the chief, and myself are at 20,000. We're asking to increase those limits to limit the number of duplicate requests coming to council, I guess. So in the budget process, the spending of those dollars have already been approved by finance committee and council. So currently, anything over $20,000 has to come back to council and be reapproved. So we're just asking to increase the signing authority to authorize those invoices to $50,000 for the chief, the director of operations, and myself.
I have a question. Signing authority, we're not signing checks no more. Well, how's that going to work?
So when the invoice comes in, according to our financial regulations, somebody has to physically sign that invoice, saying that this was approved.
Oh, that part, the paper part.
So it's a paper card that we're asking you to approve.
Because I know, like, there is a point where somebody's, the check was attached,
Yes.
so that will be, it'll be all done afterwards or before?
So before that check is processed, if it's over 20,000, then James, the chief, or myself will sign off on that, or a combination of two signatures before that check is printed. So that's basically just for audit purposes.
Are those in the regulations then, or they will be?
They are in the regulations, they're at a lower rate right now, that's why we're bringing this here, we're asking for an increase in those rates.
I think the question is, will there be an amendment to the policy?
Like as to how the process of how they get approved.
Oh, that is still part of the regulation. Though that process has not changed.
I'm just confused about the signing part, because we're not signing them, I know somebody else is.
So right now, I believe it's Ron, yourself, Lyle, and me, and Adele who have signing authority on checks, handwritten checks.
Oh, we still write those, and we're not gonna like stamp all of them with
No, that is a different process altogether, that's, you've already authorized us to go and purchase print box,
yeah.
which is gonna put your signature on there digitally, so that we don't have to sit down and sign 20,000 checks every year.
Next.
Oh.
So if I can
My signature on checks.
Not right now, no.
I know, but you will be.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Without your presence?
Pardon?
I know.
No. So the process will be that anybody whose signature is on that check has to verify those invoices. So you'll still have to sit down and look at
Oh,
it.
so I'll still have, that's what I mean, like. I was
You'll still
wondering how that was
be
gonna
reviewing
work.
those invoices.
Is everybody thoroughly confused now?
Yes.
Ron and James?
I was just gonna say that there's only 4 supposedly from past council, but I've been mostly being called. So you guys can come in anytime and sign, because it's a lot of work, so you're part of council too, so you can come in and do your signature, because as I understand it, the boss thing won't be ready until the end of November.
James and Tyler and Marcia.
So this amendment's very much separate from signing checks, and I will happily sign checks once we have print box in place, so you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. The process we're looking at is, let's say there's a large project, let's say it's water tower repair. That's gonna come to council, and you're going to approve that expenditure. Because of my signing authority, if it's under 50,000 but above 20,000, once the invoice comes in, it's going to come to council again, even though you already approved it. So we're trying to set that to 50,000 so that you're not receiving that double approval so often. But 50,000, some organizations are much higher than 50,000 in terms of what you see as a council. We're still being somewhat conservative here, but under 50,000, that's very low considering the number of expenditures we have in that range. So you'll already have approved them. We're just trying to mitigate the number of expenses that you're approving twice.
Tyler, then Marcia.
I was just saying, yeah, like, isn't that 2 separate things, but then James kind of.
Yeah.
Said that, yeah, it's issues with.
You're correct. Yeah. Marcia.
Okay, I don't have a problem with increased signing authority, that isn't my issue. But the problem I have is, I always go back to the source documents, and they have to match what we're approving. We don't have all of these people listed on Appendix B in our financial regs, so shouldn't we be going to our financial policy and you do the requested amendments and then bring those amendments here? Because policies are living documents, they change. We get into trouble when we deviate from policies.
Yep.
And then people start second guessing themselves, and then the community can come in and say, show me in the policy where you have that authority. And so we have to always be amending the policies to reflect change.
Yeah, okay, along with that, I think it'd be helpful if you had you would state the old policy that's being amended or changed, then pointing out the identified change that you're making to that policy, so that everybody sees what's being flipped around or changed, I guess, with that amendment. Robert,
So if you look at Amendment B in the current policies,
we can't, we don't have it in front of us.
oh, I'm sorry. But the Appendix B would replace the Appendix B in the current regulations. And it's just noting these signing increases.
But the old appendix, B only has 20 program supervisor and manager. It doesn't even reflect the new directors.
Right.
So that's what I'm getting to. We have to be really, really,
Has to name specific people. That which is, like the amendments have to review the title.
James,
So part of this, so we're trying to accomplish two things. One is to increase our spending authority, so we're not bringing the same items to council. The other is to put the director assigning authority in place, and that's more housekeeping in terms of having those directors in place. But right now, they're signing off on things, and I'm still signing off on very small invoices. So that's the other piece to this. They're not, you're correct, they're not named in Appendix B right now in the current version.
Burton,
Just this last bullet there, correct me if I'm wrong here. Am I reading this, that because each signing authority has $50,000, they can sign up to 100,000? Is that added, or am I reading that right, or is still the spending limit 50,000?
So the spending limit would be 50,000. In certain instances, like this gas station, when some of the invoices were 100,000, instead of everything having to come back to here, this is what this bullet is addressing. So when council says, okay, for this project, we will allow the signing authority for the chief and the duke to go up to 100,000, that's when that bullet takes effect, but only with a council motion.
Oh, okay.
so you can all, 3 of you can go up to 150,000 if you're doing 50. Or is the max 100? That's
We definitely try to identify that sort of thing and not allow it, right, in terms of taking one expenditure and splitting it.
Yeah.
We don't allow that. What this does is allows us to identify a project like the gas station where we don't want to keep bringing the same items to council. And we already did that in the past, right, with the council motion. So this just puts it in the financial regs so that it's consistent.
So we need amendments to the financial regs, right?
Yes, and that's what this is, yes.
I don't think that there's a requirement for additional amendments then, those with regards to dealing with invoices then. There would have to be a corresponding change there in terms of handling those as well, wouldn't there?
So the way the policies were now drafted is that,
Is that yes or no?
yes,
Okay, right. There would have to be a corresponding change, right?
that's what this is addressing though.
This is signing authorities, I'm talking about invoices when they come in.
So when in the policy, it references Appendix B.
Right?
So if you change Appendix B, that's your change to the policy. So everything is referenced back to Appendix B.
And we don't see appendix B there. This is just a change, right, your desired change.
Yes.
I guess that's the problem I have, but what are we changing here? Neela?
I kind of feel this is like, one of those things again where we haven't gone through all the financial regs. I'm not sure if everybody has read them, and had time to question. But I think this is also something that would go through finance committee prior to coming here.
Yeah.
That we don't have in place right now. And I think the briefing note is like lacking the changes from before. And anytime you amend a policy, you should have the old policy, the dates that it's been changed, when that's happened, and then what you're proposing the next time, some background behind it and reasons why.
Yep.
To present to us in that fashion. So it kind of leaves you just questioning, and I wouldn't want to I'll make a decision on it, just how it's proposed.
James?
So we can bring this back with the side by side. I agree with you, or we can wait until after the orientation. The reason why I asked Robert to bring this now is particularly in education. They're frequently tracking me down on items that have been approved, partly due to spending associated with COVID. And they've asked me, so when are you going to address the spending limits? And so that was part of the reason for bringing this forward. But certainly we can add more material and bring it to another.
Why wouldn't you increase the principal assignment authority to eliminate that?
No,
He has an approved budget, right?
Yeah, I think we do need to add the principal, and so we'll bring it back.
Marcia.
That's what's consistent in here, this is the director of law. That and the chief. Those are identified in the finances.
Yep.
We don't have the super directors or those positions in here. This is why I say this whole financial regulations need to be reviewed, and then we amend the changes, because there's been a whole organization structure change.
That's it.
So everything has to match when we deviate. Our members are shortchanged because and I don't need to drag this on, James, or anything, but we need to have a solid base, and we need to have policies to support our decisions. And we're policy making, we should be dealing with that, not, other matters, but it's really important that our things are revised, amended, or whatever.
Yep, and I guess the point I was making is that if you make a change to Appendix B, you gotta make sure there's not other sections within the financial policy that are affected by that change to also identify other inclusions that would match up with here. Like, are you also making a change with the director of finance in terms of processing invoices or other people? Plus, we've identified a possible omission there, I guess, in terms of alleviating some of the chase down with the principal, that would have alleviated a lot of problems over there. Because again, he's operating off an approved budget. And plus, he will have the oversight of the Board of Education to put a handle or some safeguards, I guess, in terms of expenditures. And I imagine that at some point in time, they're going to want to roll as well.
So we can bring this back and we'll highlight the pieces of the policy as another attachment so that you can see what parts of the policy it impacts.
Thank you.
And reflect the proper titles of everyone within the policy, where those changes are. Director, like it says the comptroller, but now Robert's director of finance. So is that his title? Is that Robert's title now?
Yeah.
Director of finance, so that needs to be reflected. Not comptroller.
Yep, and the most simplest place you start is looking at the glossary of terms and definitions. And if there's not something added in there, the director of finance, or as Marcia kind of super directors, or whatever their titles are, then that's got to be included in the definitions as well. I don't know if that's been made. Has it?
No.
Okay.
I just want to take note that it says all in your orientation package on your desktop. I just found the finance.
Yeah, I just.
Good.
Okay. I thought it was more intention.
Cody?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, to get a grasp on things a little bit better, I was wondering if I could get a few copies of the policy, and maybe a binder of policies. We've been dealing with a lot of, yes and no action without seeing any policies, I can go in with no clothes on, head first here. So I think that would be very important for benefit all the new council as well.
And that's why I said we need to have the orientation.
Yeah.
So I think Amy has some dates.
Elaine, and then we're gonna wrap this up.
Thank you.
Why do we need human resource directors signing purchase orders? Have we always had the human resource person sign purchase orders?
All departments sign their own purchase orders.
No, I know, program supervisors and managers, but now you're getting HR to do it. Has that always been your practice?
I'm not understanding the question. So they request a purchase order. They still have to sign that purchase order,
Up to 5,000.
up to 5,000.
That's just like a program supervisor and manager, but you're giving the HR person more.
Oh, yes, because one, they do a lot more training that costs a bit more than what a typical department would do. So when HR does training for all the staff, it might cost $7,000 or something like that. So it costs more. You understand?
I understand, but look at all these people you have that have signing authority. I don't think all of you are gonna be gone all at once. So I guess my question goes back to, do you really need the HR person and Amy to have that $5,000 authority? I don't know, maybe you do. Justify.
Just
Let's defer this whole issue to the finance committee and let them wrestle with it. I think that's the proper body.
Do we have a finance committee yet?
A what?
Finance committee?
We will.
So just leave it.
That'll be their task one, I guess. Review the policy and make amendments to it and bring it up to date. Agreed? We'll defer this to the finance committee.
As soon as dates are picked for orientation, she's got it? Okay, good.
She's working on them. She's going through the calendar right now.
What do you do tomorrow?
Marcia?
Just to prevent any disruptions and all of this, Chief busy, Director of Public busy. Those two positions are outlined in this policy. Can we give you that authority, those two positions today by motion? And that would alleviate some of that.
Well, it definitely would alleviate the backlog at this table. That would have an immediate positive. I would still have lots of paperwork, but that's fine.
Sure.
What does everyone else think about that?
I just think that it's not a change in appendix B though. I mean, you have to, whatever's in appendix B has to be approved, and you've got other things people are questioning.
Yeah.
So what you could do is, if you give us direction to come back with amendments, as he stated, we can bring that back to the next council for final approval. If you want to just change our signing authority to 50,000, and we'll bring the approved draft.
I would make that motion with that clearly stating that be a part of that amended appendix B, because the chief's name is, the chief's position is in there, director of ops position is in there. So appendix B reflects those two positions. What I'm proposing is we give them that $50,000 signing authority on approved budgets. And then the organization doesn't get bogged down because you have at least two positions that can,
And that would still be regarded as an amendment.
yes, it's going to be a part of the amended,
It's got to be an amendment.
it would be amended appendix B.
Yeah.
Amendment 1 appendix B, because when they revise the policy, it's going to be an amendment 2 with all those other.
It'll be a subsequent amendment, yeah.
Does that sound?
It's a Band-Aid. Go ahead.
Okay, so you're gonna make a motion, like, what is your sign authority now?
20,000.
Okay, so make a motion to up it to 50, and then when we do the amendment, appendix B, it'll be placed in there.
Yeah, we're doing an amendment to what they proposed.
And
Amendment
don't even
1,
think about appendix B yet,
Yeah,
because that, like, just do the 50,000,
and incorporate it.
yeah, and they'll reflect it in their.
the way I hear it, you're proposing an amendment to the existing policy, you're just changing the limits.
To the two positions.
Well, that's the only two that's listed there.
Yeah,
So we're just changing the amounts there for those two positions. That's the way I hear it.
Yeah.
Question?
Just comment, it would be like a limited, thing until the, I don't know.
There's no such thing as a limited amendment to a policy. It's either
Oh, no,
amendment, it's
until-
amendment or not amendment.
Just to change.
Yeah. Change it to increase.
Turning it into a circus.
We'll update the policy to reflect it and bring it
Yes.
back.
Thank you.
so you don't want my motion?
No, that, we should make that a motion.
Right?
There's nothing wrong with it, we use it right away. Do it.
Okay, I'm gonna try this again. We're proposing an amendment to the existing financial policy identifying the director of operations and the chief. Their spending authorities will be increased to $50,000, period.
To be reflected in appendix B of the financial regulations.
If that's required in there, is that how it's identified in the existing policy?
No, that's why we're saying it's a motion. Then
It
look
is.
at
Appendix B on the existing,
On page 28 or 29.
appendix B on the existing Whitman financial policy has chief and director of operations. Not gonna deal with the comptroller, because there's no, under the new structure, there isn't a position called comptroller. But the chief and the director of operations, I was proposing, to increase their, is it their spending authority?
Their value of purchase order authorization.
It's not a.
That's what it said.
There's too much to change
Yeah,
there.
there's too much.
Let's table that and get some proper wording on it and deal with it later. Can we do that? Yeah.
Yes.
You're trying to change policy on the go here. It's just not gonna work.
I was trying to help, James there.
Can you wait 10 days?
That was a Bakshi motion.
If worst comes to worst, we'll call an emergency meeting to increase the spending authority for the chief and the director of operations. Will also include the director of finance and whoever else wants to jump on board. Okay? We'll increase it to all the council. Call everything up. After all that, we're tabling that. Moving on.
The next item, we would like some guidance on the Christmas distribution, whether you're going to continue with the $100 to all members, but we are preparing, there does need to be some lead time. In the past, we've also distributed turkeys, also turkeys at the end, so we do need some lead time to prepare this.
Valerie.
I don't think we should go back to turkeys. People will be very disappointed. I think we should keep on with the money because people are able to buy what they need. That's my,
I agree, because we have members in California, and you want to send a turkey all the way over there, go ahead, it's not gonna be the same by the time you get it. My cousins are gonna be very disappointed. So let's work with money order or something, then. Cash.
I'll make that motion then.
Okay. Come on, it's gravy time for somebody else to jump on board here with the distribution.
I have a question.
Tyler.
I have a question about distribution.
Yep,
Can it go any higher?
you could.
Just so you're aware, it costs about $500,000 for every $100 you decide to give out. So right now you have $5 million sitting in the bank as band funds, that is unspent.
Cash on hand.
Cash on hand.
Lee.
Does all 5,000 members usually come and get that?
No, usually we end up having to return about $90,000 back into the pot every year. As unclaimed checks.
How much of an effort do we make on trying to contact them?
In the past, we have made a number of attempts to make contact with individuals. But again, what we're finding is that American banks down further south do not honor Canadian checks.
Well, we'll make an American check. We got that service at the First Nations Bank.
We can do that.
Yeah.
We would need a council.
Why are we trying to identify obstacles to provide what's duly, they should be receiving anyways?
Yeah, and we agree.
You know, like, let's find ways around the problem as opposed to identifying the problem. Lee?
So is it every household, everybody over 18, or say?
Every member.
Okay.
Marcia?
What do we do with children that are not in care of family members that are in foster homes, or children where you have a question as to who's looking after them? Like, is that money put into a trust fund for them?
It's normally.
Wait, Tyler, then Valerie.
So to my understanding, it goes to the primary care provider.
So the foster home.
Could be.
Foster parent or guardian, grandparent.
I think it usually is under 16 and under, they have to apply for that. But the check would be in 16 and under.
Or 14 and under.
Is that the way it was, Robert?
Yeah, here.
So if they were age 14 and up, we would make the check out to that band member.
Any other questions?
Motion on the floor.
Yeah, it's been moved. Second for $100. 125. 150.
We all said $100 is, that's.
Two?
Did I hear two? I hear two over here.
Second to two. It's just that.
Second to two.
I'm okay with two.
Okay with two.
That's $1 million, right?
Okay, I'll take a quick poll of the council. All those in favor of 200, I'll start with Ron. Marcia?
I'm just worried about the funding, where it's coming from.
We've got $5 million.
I'll be spending $1 million in 5 minutes.
I'm okay with two.
Two?
I'm okay with two.
Two.
Yes.
Two.
I'll go for two as well.
Ceremony anyway.
Asking me?
What's the matter with three?
Had a chance to jump in there.
I would ask the mover to amend your motion to reflect two, I almost said three. Two, is that okay with the second?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion is on the floor then, that by amendment, that we approve of the distribution in the amount of $200 for the Christmas distribution. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Ron?
When you were saying the means about getting it, what about Visa prepaid charge cards or whatever to get it to other people across southern US?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we can look at the, find out those costs.
They won't take the pre-Ks from this side.
No.
We have to go there.
Oh, how about if we wire it?
Send me over there.
I have.
We wire it, we do whatever.
Wait,
You just have to make a conversion here.
Get creative.
Good. Anything else in your,
You can go in camera now.
okay,
is that okay? Yeah.
good enough? We're going in camera. I need a motion to identify that. Moved by Valerie, second by Elaine. All those in favor? We are in camera.
I was
Staff
turning
has-
off my meeting here.
Eric's gonna stop it.
Are we going to that this year or?
What's it, up to you guys, we can go.
Pardon me?
I'm not
Are you all comfortable with the staff that's still here?
Council?
I don't know what